This bishop just preached LGBTQ rights to Trump's face, but it wasn't the first time she stood up for our rights when it mattered the most. Check out our all-new LGBTQ activity book where you can help us run a Pride event with fun crossword puzzles, mazes, and games. Get your copy today at ProfessorPride.com. This past week, convicted felon Donald Trump went to a national prayer service as part of his inauguration week, where the pastor of the church said this in her monumental sermon.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives.
Immediately after the service, Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social, quote, "The so-called bishop who spoke at the national prayer service on Tuesday morning was a radical left, hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology." But you should know Bishop Budde has long been a buddy of the gay and trans communities. So when Trump's team was choosing where to hold his national prayer service last week, it was painfully obvious Trump knew she was going to say something about his anti-LGBTQ or anti-immigration policies. So it's almost like Trump and his team wanted something to happen here, that way they can go back to their MAGA followers and dog whistle them. Secondly, to say she's a so-called bishop is ridiculous. She's a real bishop. She's allowed to speak about the world of politics just like Trump is. It's called freedom of speech. No one has to kiss your feet and be gracious of you after you come after basic human rights. Her message was a plea for mercy, and I don't really think Trump, of all people, should be judging someone else's brilliance. The National Prayer Service is historically a time for a pastor to ask an incoming president to bring the country together after a dividing election season, so her comments were very appropriate and have paralleled many other pastors' sermons at past National Prayer Services. To say her comments were boring or uninspiring means you weren't even listening, which, according to the video, you weren't. To say that she's not good at her job is something I would disagree with, but it's an opinion you're allowed to have. But to say that she owes you any sort of apology for asking you to be nice to those who fear for their lives because of your actions is insane. Trump came after LGBTQ rights hundreds of times. We asked for an apology hundreds of times, and yet we haven't gotten one yet. And he keeps coming for gay marriage and trans rights to this day. But this is far from the first time Bishop Budde has been an incredible hero to the LGBTQ community. To learn about that, we have to take you back to the University of Wyoming in 1998. On October 6th of that year, a 21-year-old named Matthew Shepard went to the Fireside Lounge on his college campus to hopefully meet another boy he can start a relationship with. While there, he was approached by Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, who offered to ride Matthew home. They instead drove him to a remote area, robbed him, pistol whipped him, tortured him, and tied him to a split-rail fence in the deserted area, leaving him to die alone. Reports describe how Matthew was beaten so brutally that his face was completely covered in blood, except where it had been partially cleansed by his own tears. 18 hours after the attack, Matthew was still tied to the fence, left in the freezing cold temperatures overnight, when he was discovered by a cyclist named Aaron Kreefels, who initially mistook Matthew for a scarecrow. Matthew was then taken to the local hospital before being moved to a more advanced hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado, where he was on full life support for 6 days before being pronounced dead at 12:53 a.m. on October 12, 1998. After his death, the two boys were charged with murder, where investigators learned they lured Matthew at the bar by pretending to be gay and liking him back. They testified how their actions were caused by Matthew touching one of their knees in the truck, and they were triggered by how they felt about gays. Luckily, the two boys were sentenced to jail for life without the possibility of parole. The case gained international media attention, and at his funeral, members of hate groups protested outside, with homophobic slurs and slogans written on picketing signs. But Matthew wasn't buried at his funeral. Instead, his parents chose to cremate him and knew their son would have loved his ashes scattered in places he loved to go. But they wanted a place where they can visit him and remember him. Sadly, everyone in Matthew's family knew if they buried him anywhere, his grave would be vandalized, so they chose to keep his ashes and wait for a time to bury them. On the 20-year anniversary of his death in 2018, Bishop Budde, the same woman who pleaded with Donald Trump this week, and Reverend V. Gene Robinson, who we talked about before on this show as the first openly gay pastor in the Episcopal Church, both held a public ceremony for Matthew Shepard's family at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Bishop Budde got the family's permission to inter Matthew Shepard's ashes inside the cathedral in Washington, so there would be a final resting place for Matthew to finally be at peace, a place they can visit anytime they wanted, and a place guarded from vandals who might want to desecrate his gravesite. To this day, Matthew Shepard's ashes are interred in the National Cathedral where Trump sat through this plea from the same bishop who helped Matthew Shepard finally have a peaceful resting place there. Trump had an opportunity to take the moment and reflect on his bad actions. Pray for the soul of Matthew Shepard and other gay people who have been hurt by homophobic actions in the past. Realize his actions as president, coming after gay rights, have deadly consequences. Take the moment and realize the severity of the office he is going into, and pray to whatever God Trump believes in for guidance and strength, as all presidents in the past have done at this service. Instead, Trump chose to not pay attention and call her boring. He chose to attack a hero for having the audacity of asking him to be human. Trump unbelievably wants her to apologize to him after he sent his MAGA mob to kill her. So thank you to Bishop Budde for being a longtime buddy of our community, for having the courage to stand up and plead with Donald Trump to be a human for the first time in his life. We genuinely don't think that he has the capability to do that, but thank you for trying. Thank you for giving Matthew Shepard a peaceful resting place, and for years of hard work fighting for LGBTQ people. In our line of work, we don't often get to see religious people act politely to our community, but Bishop Budde is one of the heroes that make our country great. If you'd like to support our show, check out ProfessorPride.com for hundreds of ways to show off your pride. Check them out now along with our LGBTQ books, magnets, pins, umbrellas, digital downloads, and more at ProfessorPride.com. Special thanks to our members and subscribers this month who proudly support our work providing LGBTQ education and resources. Please subscribe to our channel or click on this video to continue enjoying Powered by Rainbows.